Well, Jim beat him.
Good morning.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. As Chair Pro Tem, we do have a quorum present for the December 9th Audit Finance Committee meeting of the Sandusky City Commission. We'll seek approval of the September 16th, 2022 minutes, which were sent out in advance of the meeting.
So moved. Second.
Is there any further discussion by the committee? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then we will move on to new business. Any other old business come before the committee? Hearing none. New business, the 2023 meeting dates have been set, and they are on the agenda for everybody's review. And then we'll turn it over to Michelle for the November 22nd financial review.
Thank you. Before we start that, I just want to note we have the Justice Center notes, and last time we met, we had a discussion about the notes and what we were going to do. We ended up doing the short-term notes, and we had two bidders on the notes, and the bid was from KeyBank Capital Markets. Net interest cost was 3.995%. So next year we'll look for longer-term financing on that Justice Center project. Those notes will settle next week. Moving on. So November financials, I'm just going to make this brief as we have a lot of presentation as far as the budget, and that really highlights the revenue and expenditures and where we are this year also. Starting with our major revenue streams, you can see this far column for 2022. The blue is going to be our income tax dollars for the year. So $12,982,000 we've collected in revenue for income tax. As you can see, the blue line's going across. We've seen a large increase this year in net profit returns from businesses. Our gray line there, that's going to represent our admissions tax. As we all know, the admissions tax increase happened in the start of 2022, so we've seen $9.3 million as of the end of November in admissions tax. Lodging tax is the orange line, and we're sitting at $1.8 million this year in lodging tax. Here's the combined. You know, we talked, those were their three major revenue sources in the general fund, but this is all of our revenue combined. So when you look at that, we're sitting at over $30 million in revenue this year. Historically, going back to even 2017, we were sitting at $21 million. When we talk about the budget, I have another screen that shows revenue going back to 2014, which is kind of interesting because obviously that's prior to issue 8. So that's you'll see even a larger difference in the revenue we've been collecting over the years. General fund expenses as of the end of November. Again, we've talked about this before. That gray line indicates our transfer amount. The transfers from the general fund are going to capital fund due to the large increase in admissions tax that we're seeing this year. It'll take some years before that line looks a little more normal. The other expenditures, fire and police department depicted in the red and blue lines, staying pretty consistent on where they've been in the past. We are in the process of increasing fire department staff. We do have them at 48 personnel as of the end of November. The other lines there indicate municipal court and horticulture services, who've remained pretty consistent over the years. When we look at the expenditures by category, the blue line at the top indicates our wages and fringes, our personnel cost. 2017, if you look at the start of the chart for the blue line, we were at $13.3 million. Coming forward, 5 years later, our wages and fringes are only at $11.8 million. As we all know, we've took some reduction in staff. We've held that for a time period, and we also have the stimulus funds that are available to help bring back employees. So we've been utilizing some of the stimulus dollars to pay personnel cost. The yellow line, again, is the transfer amount, the large increase due to the emissions and parking tax. The orange line is our contractual services. That's anything that we contract out. And the gray line is our supplies and materials account. Here's the total general fund expenditures as of the end of November. As we saw earlier, we have a large increase in revenue, so our expenditures have also increased.
For the lightness. Amtrak usually doesn't take that long to get across the tracks.
So general fund expenditures are $27.9 million as of the end of November. Here's our cash balance. Going back to 2014, we were at $5.1 million. As we stood at the end of November, we were at $7.5 million. You'll see the large dip in 2020, obviously due to the pandemic and a lot of our tourism industry being shut down. The last chart here is our full-time employees as of the end of November. Two largest columns are going to be your police department. They have 47 officers, and then the fire department is at 51 as of the end of November. That is all I have for November financials. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. Seeing none, would we like to move on to the budget?
Yes.
So just a kind of a refresher on the budget process and how this works. Per the city charter, we cannot pass the budget for the new year, the 2023 budget, until the first commission meeting in 2023, which will be January 9th. So this budget here is going to be first reading, set to go to commission pending the recommendation by the Finance Committee today if you're satisfied with what you see. Per Ohio Revised Code, we must have a budget passed by the end of March. It's my intentions that we can hopefully pass this budget in January and start the year and get things moving. With that, we'll start with the 2023 budget. I do have everything available on the website. There's over 2,000 lines in this budget, so there's a lot to it. This obviously is not going to touch on every single line. It's meant to just be an overview and a highlight of what we've got going on in the budget. So I'm happy to set up time to meet with people and go into this further at anyone's request. This screen shows the highlights of what we have changing in the budget for 2023. You'll see in the agenda, and I guess maybe we should have done that first. We talked about the Benefits Review Committee, which meets annually. So we have 3 unions in the city, a police union, a fire union, and the AFSCME union. They all are contractually obligated to a wage increase for 2023. The police union is 2.5%, the fire department's at 3%, AFSCME's at 3%. The city committee met and they would also like to recommend a 3% increase to the administrative employees of the city. There is 41 employees that this would affect in the city. This does not affect the probationary employees. So if we have any new hires or on probation for a year, they would not be subject to this. Basically, we consider it a cost of living increase. So we are looking at doing a 3% increase for next year. And I don't know, Chair, if you'd like to take a motion to recommend that recommendation at 3% for the administrative employees for 2023.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on. So the budget does show the 3%.
We need to call the vote, Michelle.
I'm sorry.
So we have a motion on the floor, and I can't make a motion because I'm Chair Pro Tem. Are you taking over the meeting?
Pardon?
Are you taking over the meeting?
Yes, I can.
Okay, well, you can call the vote.
Okay, conduct the vote.
You want roll call?
Favor.
Do we, half the time, law director wants us to do it one at a time. The budget, I'm okay with just, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I just like to keep the law director happy.
Perfect, thank you. This budget also shows the increase in police force. There's a new agreement with Cedar Point that our police department will be taking over police duties at the park. So this includes the 5 new officers that will be needed to increase and show a constant presence over the park. We do have an agreement where they will be paying us for these 5 new officers. So it is a budget neutral item, but you will see that there's 5 additional officers in the budget. We also have an increase for fire and EMS services. There's 3 new firefighters budgeted for the 2023 budget. That is something that came out of the fact-finding report. We were required to hire 3 new firefighters. We actually have been working on that since that fact-finding report, and as of the end of November, we did hire all 3 of those firefighters. Health insurance costs for 2023, we're seeing a 22% increase. Unfortunately, that's kind of the norm from what we're hearing. But the city, we're self-insured. Our claims for 2021, the entire year, were at $4 million. As of the end of November, we've already paid out $5.6 million in claims. So that is one of the reasons we're going to see the increase in cost for next year. We do have other reinsurance, we do have stop loss, we do have some other things in place, but we still have a month to go. Typically, December can be an expensive month in health insurance. They had the data through September when they gave us those rates, so those rates are locked in for 2023. We are having a change in just more or less accounting numbers. We're moving some people around. We had the horticulture department, which was the account numbers 110-4850. 4850 dictates the department, horticulture. That took care of our forestry department, our grounds department, our greenhouse department, and like public realm. We're dividing those out in 2023. So the horticulture department, that is the 110-4850, is just going to keep the forestry department. All the other forces are combined into one department moving forward. It's depicted with account number 110-3300. So that's our parks and public realm. So you'll see changes and people moving around. You'll see budgets for the 110-3300 accounts that did not exist previously, and that is the reason. So for accounting purposes, the decision was made to have that extra account number so we can track those expenses separately from the forestry department moving forward. This budget, obviously, as we all know, there's been inflation pressures. Everyone's seeing it. Cost of supplies, our dispatching services, chemicals, they've been rising, so that this budget will depict that. The American Rescue Plans, which are our stimulus funds, we still have about $12 million in the bank to spend. We did get just over $18 million initially, but we do have a capital plan that will come to Finance Committee and Commission. The intended date would be in February of next year, so our next meeting will have a capital plan for everyone to review. And this budget, the revenue figures are conservative. As we all know, things change, so I don't want to overshoot revenue and then have us in a bad spot when we can't meet revenue.
Michelle, if
Yes.
I may, real quick. American Rescue Plans, are there any restrictions on those dollars and how we spend them?
Many.
Okay.
Many restrictions. They're federal dollars, federally regulated, uniform guidance. There's a lot of different things
Is
that
there
we
a
need.
timetable to have them spent by?
Correct, there is. They need to be expended and promised by the end of 2024. We actually have, if we have something promised, we have until 2026 at the end of the year to have them actually expended. So we're down to like two years. The general fund revenue, this chart, as we talked about when we talked about November financials, going back to 2014, here's where our general fund revenue was. We were at $16.3 million. With the passage of Issue 8, we've seen that increase. We saw a pandemic, so we saw a decrease. But here we are with the increased emissions tax and parking tax effective for the first of this year. Right now, we're sitting at $13.3 million in revenue, and that was as of the end of November. So going forward in 2023, like I said, revenue is still conservative. $31 million is what we've collected through the end of November right now. Going forward, the total budget for the general fund revenue is at $29.3 million, just to make sure we have some wiggle room if something doesn't come in exactly as planned. Here's a breakdown of that revenue for general fund, the $29.3 million that we have budgeted. 42% of that comes from our income tax dollars. Another 29% comes from the admissions tax. 10%, the piece there in yellow, is from departmental revenue. That's where our police department, our fire department, municipal court bills back for services. That revenue comes in, almost totaling $3 million. That darker green piece there is our property taxes. So the $1.7 million is what we expect to receive in property taxes next year. The dark blue is our lodging tax. About 6% of our general fund budget for revenue is from lodging tax. I guess it's a brown colored piece of the pie there, is our local government share. It equates to about $856,000 in this budget. Oh, things touchy, sorry. And then the interest earnings, next year, we're seeing an increase in interest earnings, which is great. But there's other, it's a give and take on that. So we're seeing an increase in earnings on the revenue side of $665,000 is the estimate, and that is a very good number with the interest rates that we're seeing right now.
Michelle, on the prior slide, you referenced parking tax increase.
The parking tax increase?
Where's that in here? Is it just under admission tax? Is that all lumped together?
No, it's not.
That doesn't seem like it was enough.
I don't know if that got cut off. Good question. So, I'll give you the exact number in that for parking tax next year.
Did that increase for 2022 and 2023?
Yes, we're seeing a small increase coming in for 2022 for parking tax, but all the passes that they sold in 2021, we didn't see that revenue for parking tax this year. It was just people coming through the gate in 2022. Parking tax, as we stand at the end of November, was $370,000 that we collected. In next year's budget, there's $550,000. So that's a large chunk of the miscellaneous there.
That was a good question.
Was. And feel free, if anybody has any questions, stop me in any moment. That takes care of basically the revenue side. Here is the expenditure side. This slide just shows the proposed budget for 2023 in the far right column. We show the prior years there in 2020, 2021, where we're at year to date. And this just goes by fund. So this is a high-level overview of the whole entire budget. I'll have further slides. I'll talk about the general fund. The general fund budget for next year is $29.3 million. This year, the budget was $32 million. And like I said, we always just need to make sure our revenue meets our expenditures. We can make adjustments next year as we go if needed. This just lists every fund. Again, all this in greater detail is available on the website, and I've sent you guys other budget documents if you need any further detail. I'm happy to give that to you. As we go all the way through, all
Michelle,
the funds.
can I ask you, Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Payroll stabilization, you actually have that going down next year. You expect less retirements next year?
At this point,
Yeah, on the proposed 23, yeah. You go from 382 down to 345.
correct. So as of right now, where we're standing with payroll stabilization, we've used $191,303. Next year, payroll stabilization, I know we have one for sure in January. We have another one in the middle of the year. We have a couple firefighters that are thinking about it. So this year, what you're looking at, that $382,000 for payroll stabilization was the budgeted amount. As we all know, people could retire unexpectedly or leave for whatever reason, and that number would need to be adjusted. At this moment, I think $345,000 for the budget next year is a good number, knowing this year we were only spending $191,000. That figure of $345,000 still gives us quite a bit of wiggle room if there's unexpected retirements next year.
And you and the city manager usually meet at the end of the year to see what kind of funds you have, whether or not you can put more into there.
Correct. So to that topic right now, the payroll stabilization has $399,667 in it as of the end of November. Again, we have the expenses of $191,000 that will be coming out here in December, but we also have a transfer of $195,000 at a minimum going in there. So at the end of this year, we'll still have over $400,000 in the payroll stabilization. The figure that we're looking there, $345,000, is well within that. If we need to make adjustments, we definitely can. I think, we typically don't have a lot of unexpected retirements unless there's a change to a pension system or some change, outside of the city that we're not expecting. So all funds listed, the far right, you'll see that this budget in total is just under $90 million. We're sitting at $89.5 million for all the funds combined. This slide depicts the general fund expenditures and where the dollars are going next year. 2022 budget is on the first column. Their 2023 budget is there in blue. All the different departments in the budget, the highest expenditures are going to be the police department. As we talked, we're increasing the forces there. They're using 18% of the general fund budget. Fire department is at the same level at 18% of the general fund budget. Administrative support down here at the bottom is 36%. That's where all of our transfer dollars run. All of our admissions tax, lodging tax, income tax comes into the general fund, and then due to promises for issue 8 or the new Cedar Point partnership agreement, those funds get transferred out over into the capital fund for expending later. And like I said, you know, we don't have a capital budget. This is basically an O&M budget, so capital plan will be coming back to you guys next year with further details on what projects will be coming.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the chair.
Yeah, done here.
Just, Michelle, one quick question. Parks and Public went from 0 to 1.2 million and from 22 to 23. Catch me up on that.
Sure. So that's what we talked about. This is where the Parks and Public realm is basically the new department. So prior to this, we didn't have any expenditures. So the $1.2 million that you see here for Parks and Realm, that used to be shown here in the Horticultural Department, which is the 4850. You'll see.
So you're just breaking that out?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
The figure is $1.5 million that we've spent in horticulture this year. We're doing further accounting, just kind of keep track of expenditures better moving forward.
That's what you referenced earlier with the, okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we move on?
Pardon me?
Here's our number of full-time employees by department. This lists all departments. It's not just general fund. You'll see 2021 numbers there, 2022 numbers, and moving on to 2023. The largest changes in employee counts is going to be the police and fire departments. So total count in this budget for full-time employees for 2023 is 257 full-time employees. That is an increase. As I mentioned earlier, the police department, we have revenue coming in for that. The fire department, they do have 3 new firefighters, and we do have, you know, small amounts of EMS revenue to help subsidize that, but that's not exactly 100% funded in the budget. It has to just be made up out of general fund. We talked a little bit about the transfer amounts. This slide depicts the 2022 transfers versus the 2023 transfers. The dark blue column is the 2022 amounts, and the light blue column is the 2023 amounts. There's not a lot of big changes in here. We have transit funds, park and rec, you'll see a small increase there. Public art, you'll see an increase in that transfer. That's due because of ordinance. What we collect in admissions tax, we owe the art fund 1%. So we've seen an increase over last year in admissions tax. In admissions tax, so we owe that to the art fund next year. Programming dollars, same thing. That's based off of lodging tax. We've seen an increase in lodging tax, so that is due to the programming fund. Housing grants is staying stable at $400,000. Economic development grants is staying at $500,000. We have issue 8 projects that remains at $1.5 million next year. The increase for admission and parking tax, don't want to beat a dead horse, but we all know we're going to expect additional money next year that we can do transfers with. The fire pension, we'll see an increase to fire pension that we need to do a transfer. Again, additional personnel require additional pension amounts that it will be liable for. Same thing with police pension, small increase there. Payroll stabilization, as Craig pointed out earlier, we saw a little bit of a decrease, but at this point, $150,000 should cover it.
Just quick clarification on the transit going down, is that because as that continues to grow, we're generating more revenue, so we don't have to transfer as much in to support it?
Just the opposite. So this slide here shows the current transfer amounts to transit. So $650,000 is the budget amount right now for transit. They're going to exceed that. They're going to need more funds by the end of this year to make ends meet for transit. They do have a meeting starting in January at the library where they're looking at ways to reduce costs for transit. So they're starting to have public meetings and see what they can do to kind of contain expenses in the transit. This slide here is our general fund expenses. Those are shown on the large bar graph. What we're looking at the budget for 2023, as we talked in the general fund, we're at $29.3 million on the end. The wave line underneath is we're targeting hopefully to be 20% of what we expend next year to have in a cash reserve. So our target balance for cash reserve at the end of 2023 would put us at the $6 million mark. And that is what I had on the budget, but I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that anybody may have.
Any questions or comments? Tom?
What projects are not funded in your budget currently that if revenue comes in hard, you would green light or would want to green light? Do we have a list?
So for the 5-year capital plan, we're working on that currently. Aaron Klein in Public Works meets with every department. I meet, when I can with every department also. There's a multitude of lists. I mean, he's got a wish list, and what happens is as we go through and find funding factors, the projects that were in 2023 for that department's wish list just get moved to the following year. So we'll have that list. We don't have it today, but we will definitely have a list of everyone's request of what they wanted to see in the budget and what got funded and what didn't. And if there's extra that things can get moved around from year to year, we'll have those different projects to look at.
Chairman, if I may build on that just a little bit. The commission had instituted a capital budget process several years ago. It was suspended by the coronavirus and the pandemic. And so we didn't ask for that for 3 years, really, I think, Michelle, if I'm right about that. And we're just now back to the point where things are stable enough and they're predictable enough that it's okay to go back to having a capital budget. I don't know if you remember the capital budgets, but Aaron Klein would go through and all the different things that we might want to be considering funding over the course of the next 5 years, always a 5-year period. He would then go through with a cost estimate and then all the different funding sources. So what might be grants, what might come to the general fund, what might come to the capital funds, what might come from the state. I mean, just a lot of different sources. So it's a really great sources and uses, and it's a really great tool for moving forward. So, yeah, there's a lot that's out there, and if something extra, if we were to have extra funding, then that's something the commission would have to approve. It's not something that, the administration will be able to do on its own. So we're looking forward to being able to fund a lot of those projects. There's a lot to be done over the course of the next 3 or 4, 5 years, however far out we look. And I think we're going to be able to get it done. So I'm really excited about where we go from here. Just want to add 2 other things. That the balance in the fund, the general fund balance, should be increasing as it is because our revenues are larger. So we had long ago targeted a certain percentage, I think 15%. We want to have a 15% reserve minimum. And ours goes up and down because of the variability of the admissions tax, obviously. But we want to have, on average, 15% minimum reserve. That served us very well during the pandemic. You saw when it dropped down, we had to cut staffing a lot. We didn't have to cut staffing as much as we would have had we not been able to dip into the balance. So it's a very important stopgap, a very important piece of insurance for us, if you will. And then the other thing that I'll mention is if you go through the 2,000 line plus budget, Michelle has a lot of it annotated. So you can see why a particular line changed, and the forestry stuff is just going to drive you crazy because it's going to keep coming up over and over again. Mr. Nichols touched on a point, just a sidebar here between the two of us. One of the problem childs of the finance system here has been municipal court in recent years. I wonder if you might be able to address that, Mr. Chairman, with your permission to talk a little bit about where we're going, because I continue to see, I think if I remember correctly, revenues declining, expenses increasing, and I just don't know. And I know they've done some transfers from some funds to cover the shortfall, but that doesn't seem like a sustainable solution unless those funds are replenished outside the city.
The only thing before you get to that, Mr. Murray, is when we had that conversation with Aaron, one of the things was the enterprise funds, because we didn't want to have all of a sudden 8% increases in water rates. I mean, and we don't want surprises. And we know that the EPA is out there and they're constantly adding something. So to me, I think we need to, not only just a capital budget, but I think the enterprise funds, water and sewer, need to have a budget, because, we're an old city, and lines break, and I believe Aaron did a pretty good job on that when we had that conversation.
Well, that was some years ago.
Yeah.
And then we had a series of rate increases.
Yeah.
The funds continued to be replenished.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where we go. I think there's a rate study out there in the future. And I think we're coming up near the, I think, Ms. Reader, if I'm correct, we're coming up near the end of the, what does he call it? There's basically a contract with the EPA, the general agreement or whatever it is that dictates what our capital expenditures have to be. I think we're coming up near the end of that, and it's time to reset that. Okay, so it's going to be time to reset that. It's probably about the same time we want to do a rate study and see where we're going.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that the enterprise fund was along with capital. But again, Mr. Murray's contention is the municipal court.
Absolutely.
And something, since I've been on this committee, that we've had issues with, so.
Sure. So to touch on that point, for municipal court, as of the end of November, they had expenditures of $863,204. Their revenue at the same time period was $822,000. So there is a $40,000 deficit right now at the moment that they've spent more than they've taken in. But also they're due the third quarter billing of where we bill back Erie County for a portion of the services that our municipal court provides. That's about $24,000 that we're expecting yet. So there's about a $16,000 gap right now at the moment, and we're in conversations with the court, as we always are, as far as they do dip into their probationary funds to make up that gap. The probationary funds goes to their probationary department. It's a legal thing for them to do. But yes, we need to be cautious of what they're spending out of that probation fund also to make sure there's funds available for the future. During the pandemic, there was a wider, expense versus revenue difference. They're closing that gap quite a bit, but absolutely we'll continue to monitor that going forward.
Your other question was about the sewer and water funds.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to address that at all, Ms. Reader, or whether that's for another day. I mean, those funds total, what is the total of those funds? Collectively, they dwarf the general fund.
So the water and sewer funds, absolutely, that is, beside the general fund, those are the two largest, funds that we look at on a regular basis. Water funds, sewer funds, with this pandemic, it's been horrendous, the amount of increases that we're seeing. Commission, I know, on Monday is going to be approving chemical contracts. The chemical contracts for next year in our water department alone increased like $400,000. It's a large increase. To the point of the rates, we haven't increased rates since 2021. They've been the same. So 2021 and 2022, we stayed at the same rates, but that was, 7 years prior to that, we had large increases in water and sewer rates. The first 3 years of that rate, we increased 25%. Year after year after year. Then it was 5%, and then 3 years of 3% increases in water and sewer rates. We're monitoring that. We don't want to be back in that situation that our residents have to have such a large increase and a shock to their, personal bills, because just like everyone else, the city's getting hit with expenses, but homeowners are getting hit with it too. We're trying to balance that act to make sure we don't have to increase water and sewer expenditures. We're maintaining that at this moment, but, we are constantly looking at that and making sure we have a good water and sewer system while also maintaining the cost within those departments.
Mr. Chairman, if I just may add, for the 13 years before the commission increased water and sewer rates I think we did that at the end of 2014, maybe it was 2013, I don't remember for certain.
It was passed in 14 and
okay.
The rate started in 15.
Okay, thank you. For 13 years, we hadn't increased rates, and that was just dereliction of duty on the city's part, the commission's part, finance department's part. We should have been looking at that earlier than we did, and we shouldn't have been hitting the residents with that kind of a rate increase. Nobody wants to increase water and sewer rates. I can guarantee you that. But, we're seeing this issue across the country. Open up a newspaper, read the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Every single community in northeastern Ohio is being hit by rate increases. We don't want it, but we realize that that's the price of clean water. And it's also, as Ms. Reeder points out, it's also part parcel of inflation, so.
But I think if we plan a little bit, we can do it in a more gradual basis as opposed to getting hit in a large basis. And I think that's basically what we learned from the last one.
Absolutely, I agree. I don't want to be the one telling residents we have to do a 25% rate increase for 3 years. No way. So
You
with,
weren't here, right? You just blamed it on somebody else.
wasn't me. So with that, if you guys are satisfied with the 2023 budget and the numbers that were presented, if you're open to doing a recommendation for commission to approve the budget, we could do that at this time.
Anybody have any other questions? So basically, the motion would be to recommend it to the commission.
Correct.
So
I'll
could
make
I
a
have that
motion
motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we recommend the first reading of the 2023 budget to the city commission.
A second.
Made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all very much.
Very good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you did really
You
good.
know,
Michelle.
Thank you.
That's the best
I'm sitting
presentation
here
I've
with
seen.
you sent me the breakdown, one of those CPAs that cuts pain in the
Yeah.
ass, okay?
I thought it really
But
was.
get to see it broken down this way.
Yeah, you did a really
It's
great
a
job.
whole different process than what we used to do. I mean, it's very detailed.
Yeah.
Mr. Rusat said, Michelle, under his breath over here, it's the best presentation he's seen, and since we've been around here
Yeah,
for
it
almost
was-
20 years, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You're taking in high confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I want to be fully transparent, so, if you guys have any further questions, feel free at any time to ask. It's all out there on the website.
Yeah, that was great.
So nothing further on the budget. You sent us last night the November financials. Is that where you want to go to next?
Been there, done that.
We covered those before you got here, Al.
I'm sorry?
We covered those before you got here.
Okay, I apologize. Okay.
I think we're on to public participation.
I'm sorry.
I think we're down to public participation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we're down to, okay. Anybody from the public have any comments or? Sharon, glad to see you.
I have a few here, just to, first question
Hey,
is.
Sharon, can you come up to the mic? With this room, I'm gonna complain to the commission. This room echoes and.
Well, it's also so the public can hear.
Yes.
My first question is, the final budget, did I hear you say it's mandated
You
that we
almost have
have?
to talk into the microphone, Sharon.
Right, gotcha.
Thank you.
The first question is for the final budget, when is that due? What's the drop dead date on that?
If I may, Ms. Reeder explained that by charter, we're required to approve it by the last meeting.
Can you bring your mic up?
Fair enough. Ms. Reeder explained earlier, and I know this otherwise, that by the charter, we're required to approve it by the end of, the end of March. And traditionally, that's what the commission did until Ms. Reeder took the position, and we've been approving them in January, which is wonderful. And I want to echo what Mr. Rusat said. I've been around city government for a long time now. Ms. Reeder is the best we've had in that position in a long time, period. So,
Okay,
great job.
so the commission will approve of this the first meeting of January then?
We vote on it once, and then we vote on it a second time.
Okay.
Likely the first and second meetings in January.
Okay.
If I may. So it's actually coming for first reading to the December 12th meeting of commission. That way, it's presented to commission on December 12th, but per our charter, it cannot get passed until the first meeting in January. That way, it gives the commission a full month to have it in their hands and see the presentation before voting on it. They can vote on it on January 9th of 2023.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 2 is the raises. Is 3% a bit steep since we're going into a recession?
I don't know, Social Security went up 8.4,
7.
8.7? Yeah, I don't know. It went up quite a bit.
Not only that, but in the other industries that I'm involved in, it's difficult to find good people, okay? And
Very difficult.
unfortunately, you're going to have to pay for good people. And I don't think that's out of line. And what I see from other industries, to try to have somebody move and try to retrain somebody, I guarantee it will cost you more than what that raise is. And I feel that within the budget that we have that money available, and we want to keep good people, because as you keep good people, you get good services, and hopefully the people of Sandusky appreciate that.
Also, if I may, 3 of those raises are contractually obligated through the union contract. So the one we're only talking about is the administrative increase. And to Al's point, we need to have strong administrative leadership to make sure that the city moves forward. So 3% does not seem out of line.
Is administration under the union?
No.
Administration?
No.
What?
We have the police, the fire, and AFSCME.
That's a lot of money for administration, but if you can make sense of that, okay.
There's a lot of money in administration for what? I'm sorry.
Administration's getting 3%,
Okay.
okay? Fire was 3%, I think, and police was 2.5%.
Correct. And AFSCME was 3%.
Some of that's
It's contractually
negotiated.
It's contractually obligated, so.
Okay. The capital budget, we talked about that a little bit, and that should figure in with this overall picture here. When is the capital budget supposed to be due, since we didn't have it for 2 or 3 years? We should be able to know what projects are coming up in the next year. The public should know
If I'm
that.
not mistaken, we've indicated that in our February meeting that we were going to go through the capital budget for whatever projects that we can foresee, and I would
We were
I would
doing,
not want to comment on the capital budget until management's had a chance to put everything together and tell us what they want to do.
because,
And I think it's important.
right, oh, yes. We were doing a 5-year projection, and like I said, we haven't had one for 2 or 3 years, so I'm just wondering is that going to happen in 2023 or 2024 or what? I mean,
Yeah. In the February meeting, I remember my notes correctly, Michelle is going to present a capital budget. Now, I don't know how many years ahead or what she's going to do, but she will present that capital budget, and then we can question it from there. But I got to see something before I can question it.
Correct, if I may.
I mean,
To
you're
Ms. Johnson's comment.
going to be doing some big budgets here for the capital, and that better happen pretty soon, don't you think?
We're working on them currently, yes. So we've got to figure out what year-end numbers are, so we're working on that. Once we have final year-end numbers, we'll work on it and finalize it in January. It comes back to this board on their meeting in February 17th, and then it'll also be back in front of the commission. It will have a 5-year capital plan.
Yes.
Okay. Last thing here is $400,000 for an increase for chemicals for the water and sewer. Wow, that's a lot of money. 400,000?
And it goes through a bidding process.
Don't we have any competitors when we go out to bid?
We do. That is the market. we've done everything we can. We absolutely don't want to pay that either, and that is the maximum cost of the chemicals if we utilize all the quantities that they estimated.
How many bids do we get usually on that? One or two, or?
I think there's like 28 different chemicals that they bid out, so I could not speak at the specifics of that right now.
Get up to 20?
We have like 28 different chemicals that they were bidding out.
I know, but how many bids are coming in?
I don't have that information. Public Works, I can get that for you.
I think somebody better get that information. I'd like to know what's going on with that.
Unfortunately, it's just like our bond issues. On some things, you get 2 or 3, some you get 1. We can't control the number of people that are going to bid, okay? We can put it up, we advertise it, whoever bids, bids. I don't think we can go down Washington Street and chase people and ask them to bid.
Right, I understand, but if there's like 1 bid coming in, I'd be really concerned about this. You know, I just asked how many bids, nobody knows, so I'll have to find that out.
I would presume under the current market conditions that we're probably lucky to get some of the chemicals that are required.
Mr. Chairman, I'm involved with a couple of golf courses, or one specifically, and Mills Creek is going to find the same thing. Fertilizer is off the map.
Oh.
It is incomprehensible how expensive sharing this stuff, and these gentlemen are right. If you can get somebody to bid, and the city's sending this stuff out to bid to all the people that can bid on this stuff and legitimately supply it, which is another big point, legitimately supply the stuff. They're doing everything right, Sharon. You have my
'Cause
full.
the supply chain is what it is. And unfortunately, if you turn the TV on, or even read the register, I'll pick on them a little bit today. Supply chain is a definite problem.
Right, but I'd be concerned too that some people are taking advantage of this. I don't know how you
Who
can
would
prove
be
that
taking
or what.
advantage of it?
You know, price gouging during this time. It could happen to gasoline, it can happen to anything.
Okay. I don't think
But-
we're here to discuss that.
Okay, but I have a last one here. I'm very concerned about the municipal court being $40,000 in the red. That's not good. What's happening there?
If you'll remember Mr. Murray's and my comment somewhere back, that is something that we're looking into and trying to figure out why. And we agree with you, Sharon. And
They're supposed to be.
Michelle is working with that, and the court has, like I said, been a thorn in our side for some period of time.
But they're supposed to be propping up this Justice Center too, holding up their part of the deal too. How can they do that when they're operating in the red?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, Ms. Reeder indicated already that $24,000 of the $40,000 gap is being covered by way of a reimbursement of expenses from the county. So it's a $16,000 gap. Still something we need to look at, but they're backfilling it with other funds that they have available. It's not a long-term sustainable solution. And then the other thing is that the capital funds are a separate account that is paid out of court costs. That's been collected for years. It will continue to be collected for years. So we're not really concerned about them having those funds available. That's a separate account.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions from public? No, you're not the public.
Today I'm the public. Wish you could be the public.
Man, I'll tell you what, now he's gonna pull rank.
I sat in the
Mr.
back.
Brady, would you like to speak?
Thank you.
Take my identification.
My name's Dick Brady. I live at 1625 Willow Drive. I do have the answer for Sharon on the chemicals. It is a competitively bidding process. And for every chemical that we purchase, we got between 2 and 5 separate bids from totally separate companies. So you're absolutely correct. I don't think it's fair to accuse anyone of price gouging. That is the norm across the world right now, due to supply chain issues, due to inflation, due to the war in Ukraine. Blame it on anything you want. it is reality. But getting 2 to 5 bids on every chemical that we buy, and we buy a lot of chemicals, I think that serves the city well, and I think we and you folks are all being good stewards of our dollars in that. That's all I have to add.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Does anybody else from the public have any comments? If not, I will remind everybody of the upcoming meetings, February 17th, June 23rd, September 15th, and December 8th. And as usual, we set those down so that you can have them on your calendar. As a couple years ago, we found out that we needed more meetings, and if I can't see us canceling these meetings because you need at least that many, but if we need more, we'll give adequate notice for any specific issues, because we do have a lot of things in the pipeline. But as of today, those are the meetings that we're setting for the Finance Committee. So I don't think I need any approval on them, just information. So with that, is there anything else before I, who pointed? Oh, God.
No, I was standing up to go, not talking. Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is about the least I've ever talked. With smart questions, by the way.
Yeah, all good.
Here we go.
Then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There you go.
Yes, sir. What?
Second, I'll second the motion. Merry Christmas, or Happy Holidays.
I'm going to say, everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, you too.
And meeting adjourned.